This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Here everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for September 11th, 2020. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on our own dedicated podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can find us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you would like to leave a donation, certainly no obligation whatsoever, but it'd be greatly appreciated. Click the link in the show notes and it'll take you to our red circle page. You hit the red button for a donation. You can either do a one-time or recurring donation, and I'd like to take a moment to thank the people who have sent us donations so far. We greatly appreciate it. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears, and joined alongside Case Lowe, as always. In Case, we are finally on the final path to Dangerous Gate. Everything's come together. They were back in Korakuen to kick off September, and it's really kind of got me in like the cage match mood. I definitely feel like I'm in a dangerous mood. How are you feeling about this week's shows, and how are you feeling in general?
Well, naturally, I'm always feeling dangerous. I do live an off-kilter lifestyle, and I'm pumped for what's to come in this month. We got a really good Korakuen Hall show that we're going to talk about in just a second. We got a great Korakuen Hall show on the 9th. There's an Osaka doubleheader. The first show has likely happened by the time you're listening to this, but even then, we'll preview it, give you the rundown if you haven't seen it yet for what you need to watch. And we talked last month, August was the month where 8 shows aired live on the Dragon Gate Network. Well, this month there's 6. One of them is the Masato Yoshino anniversary show, which we'll talk about more next week. And then one of them is Dangerous Gate, one of the big 5 with one of the marquee matches. That will also have a full preview next week. But we are in the swing of things. Things are happening. I'm excited for what's to come this month.
Yeah. And given how loaded August was, this month does feel a little bit more like we're in the swing of things. It does not feel like it's like, oh, this is like a rare month like this. Like, this feels like the lead to something. The Osaka show's coming up this weekend. We're going to talk about a bit later. And getting another homecoming show in Higashi, Osaka is going to be really exciting as well. And then from there, it's off to the races for the rest of the year. Like, this really does, like, I know we've talked about like the hot period and all of this, but we kind of had like a preliminary hot period in a way with all those shows in August and with all the things that have been going on, that it kind of, in a lot of ways, was like we were doing like our first practices. Like, we're back in sports. We're doing our 2-a-days, and that kind of settles us into what's going to be a very exciting remainder of Dragon Gate's 2020 year.
Well, fans returned on July 4th in Kyoto, and looking at the schedule and just seeing the way things have played out, there's really no stopping the momentum until we likely hit January and February and the usual dead period there, because Dragon Gate tends to start the year a little bit slower. But we're talking about a loaded lineup in July, a loaded lineup in August. We've got a big pay-per-view this month. October Korakuen is already going to be a noteworthy Korakuen because we're going to have the new Demon Unmasked. And then November has Gate of Destiny and Kobe World within the span of 2 weeks. And then December is a Korakuen Hall show and Final Gate at the end of the year. So it does not stop. It is going to be a continuous effort from here on out with the roster. I'm excited to cover it all with you. There's so much wrestling in Japan that is about to unfold between the G1 and the N1 and the Champions Carnival and this and that. I understand that Dragon Gate is probably going to get lost in the shuffle, but excluding the A block of the G1, which I was kind of waxing poetically about to Mike before we started recording, where you have your Shingos and Okadas and Ishis and Ospreys and these incredibly, incredibly talented people all in one block, I expect that to outdo Dragon Gate in terms of some match quality, but in terms of overall show quality, storytelling, etc., there's a lot of wrestling going on within the next few months, but I really don't anticipate any company topping Dragon Gate from an overall package unless Dragon Gate falls off a cliff and, doesn't capitalize on the momentum they've built up for the last few months.
And I think that's actually a good way to kind of start looking into this month's Korakuen, because everything came together on this Korakuen. We've been speculating for weeks, like, okay, we know what the top line match is at Dangerous Gate. We know about the cage match. They've put together the twin and triangle matches beforehand. We now have a Brave Gate match. We have a special challenge match. And this was interesting because this would traditionally be like a go-home show, but I mean, they still have their double shot in Osaka and then the Yoshino homecoming show. But in a lot of ways, this felt like the show that everything came together for what looks like to be an incredibly compelling Dangerous Gate, and we might get into it either this week or next week given time. Just like looking at past Dangerous Gate shows, what they have on paper right now stacks up with the best of them.
Well, it's a weird show, too, because it is Dangerous Gate, but it's built like it's Dead or Alive, and if you look at the typical build for the Dead or Alive show, which happens on May 5th or 6th every year, the Korakuen in May is always after Dead or Alive. It is typically the start of the King of Gate tournament. So you come out of Champions Gate in March, and then you get a March Korakuen and an April Korakuen, and then, maybe a Fukuoka show, probably an Osaka number 2 show. Maybe they go back after Champions Gate, but not likely. So typically, the build to the cage match is expedited. They don't have a ton of televised shows to get in all of this booking, and it sort of plagued this show. We talked about it a lot, how the main event on this show, the September 9th Stormgate Korakuen, felt like a retread of what they had already done last month. Although I understand why they wanted to shake things up a little bit more, the main event was like, been there, done that. We've seen this combination of guys in the main of Korakuen Hall. We just want to get to the cage match now, but they had so much time to build to this match where it's typically a very rushed process. And then you look at the rest of the card, and again, we'll go match by match full card breakdown next week when we're a little bit closer to the show. But everything that came out of this show just stacked and stacked and stacked. And now we have a really loaded card for what it's hard to believe. It's the first big 5 that we're getting this year. Dead or Alive was canceled. Kobe World was postponed. We are finally getting a big Dragon Gate pay-per-view in the month of September. And it's with Dangerous Gate, and it is a loaded show, thanks in large part due to the storytelling of this Korakuen Hall show.
So let's get into this Korakuen Hall show. It happened on September 9th, 2020. Attendance was 658. I've seen that reported as somewhat of a sellout, somewhat not. It's kind of complicated with COVID measures, but it is up a massive 80 seats from last month. They've been building month to month in Korakuen. It started off like in 500, and now they're approaching 700, and it seems like that protocols are going to get relaxed even more in the future. So it was a strong just overall business performance, and then it ended up being a 2.5 hour show. That case, in my opinion, there was one match where I thought was a blowaway match, but the rest of the card, I mean, other than the one match that we both were talking about last week that were like, I don't know about this, everything was either to expectations in ring or storyline wise, and it came out to be, I was very satisfied after I finished watching the show. What were your thoughts about this month's Korakuen overall?
Well, the booking abomination of Yosuke Santa Maria and Punch Tamanaga versus Takashi Yoshida and Diamante, that match was not as bad as it could have been. I did not find that match to be offensive in the slightest. So when you look at how that, I'm not going to say it delivered, let's not get carried away, but how that match wasn't bad, and even with what I thought was a disappointing main event, which we'll kind of talk about the pros and the cons of that match, I really liked this show. I thought the opener was fun. I went back-to-back 4-star matches in the middle of the card. I liked the semi-main event a lot. I mean, the thing with the roster is right now, I was thinking about this right before we went on the air, there was such a strange division within the roster where you could argue the main event, Shimizu Eita Yamato versus Hulk Kai and Yoshino, with the exception of Naruki Doi, those are probably the 6 most over guys in the company, and they're weirdly the least exciting group of guys right now. I think Mike and I, it goes to our taste a little bit that we're so interested in gearing towards the future and who's next and blue chip prospects and all of this, but you look at the card and even the match that preceded it, Ashita and Sakamoto, who's become a really good wrestler, against Ben K and Daya. Like, I'm just more intrigued by what those guys are doing. The 8-man tag of Lee Minoru and KZ and UT versus Dragon Kid, Kagetora, Doi, and Susumu, like, those are guys that I have a real investment in. It's weird to think that the main event scene right now, for as good as this company is, and for as strong as the booking is, it's weird to think that the main event scene is actually what I'm least interested in right now.
And it's something where there has been periods, long stretches of this promotion in recent memory, where it was so bolstered by, okay, whatever's going to happen in the 4 matches pre-intermission will happen, but we know that the semi-main and the main at a Korakuen is going to make the show worth it. Now I'm like looking at it, and there's certainly like the storyline investment in the main event, and I think it's good that it has that, because you do have pretty much from match 3 through 6 on the show, you will have matches that, or match 4 through 6 on the show, that arguably, according to what your personal tastes are in your opinion, you could make a rational argument for 3-4-star matches here. And I think that that's entirely reasonable. And then you have the main event, which in a lot of ways, like, this is where you're getting the classic Dragon System melodrama there. So it kind of ties it in there. And they're in a very comfortable situation in a lot of ways that I'm okay with them having a 3.5-star main event and doing a lot of storyline stuff, because you have all of the solid stuff that's happening right before it. So it's an interesting predicament. And I think you're totally right about like investment, at least in a match quality standpoint for the main event. But it's almost like that they're in this really like interesting phase that I feel like there's an abundance of riches, like match quality wise. And it's important that now you're starting to see the crowd, as much as we can tell, latch onto some of these younger figures, because you look at the remainder of this card and you're having this interesting disparity of guys who are in their early 20s and then guys that are in their 40s and their 50s, and it's important to get the guys in their 20s over, because who knows who's going to be around in 5 and 10 years. So it's a real interesting thing that's kind of interplaying with itself, and I feel like that it was very clear that that was happening as well on this Korakuen.
And I should clarify quickly before we start at the opener and break down this card, but I enjoy the main event scene for what it is right now. I was just I was looking at some older cards, like the 2017 main event scene from the back half of Yamato's Open the Dream Gate run that started off perfectly with him beating Shingo at World, and then just evolved, or devolved rather, into making me hate Yamato. And Yamato dropped the title to Mochizuki, Masaki Mochizuki, our favorite wrestler, and I didn't even care for Mochizuki's reign up until the end of it, when he defended against Ben K and KZ towards, the beginnings of 2018. Like, the 2017 main event scene was bad, because despite Yamato creeping up to 4 stars and Mochizuki, can roll out of bed and put on a 4.25-star match, there was zero emotional investment in the storytelling going on at the top of the card. Now it's just a case where I think there's so much exciting young talent in the company that I'm, when cards are released, I'm looking at matches 3, 4, and 5 to see what's going on there, and then I accept the main event for what it is, because I'm invested in that storytelling, even if I know it's probably not going to top any match of the year list. But up and down the card, I really like what's happening, and it was apparent on this show where up and down the card I really liked what was happening.
Yeah, and I think with that, it's a good way to transition into breaking down this show. Again, this was on the 9th. It'll be up on the network through the 16th, and at least for the Japanese commentary version. I do not believe, as of time of recording, that the English commentary is up with Jay and Ho Ho Loon yet, but when it goes up, it does seem like they don't pull down the English commentary, so that looks like that'll be up for the immediate future with no idea of a time frame. But the opener was an unaffiliated tag match with Maraha Sapa of Genki Horiguchi and Ryo Saito getting the win over the unaffiliated team of Masaki Mochizuki and Gamma. Horiguchi got the win with a backslide from Heaven in 10 minutes and 43 on Gamma. And really kind of interesting opener. It was a lot more playing to Ryo Saito's comedy strengths than anything else, but it ended up like it was not like a blowaway, but it ended up like coming out. I was like, you know what? If this is like the big comedy match on the show, this was a fun, lighthearted kind of jaunt to start the evening.
I like the Mochizuki Gamma team. It's a messed up combination of one of the best wrestlers of all time and one of the most groan-inducing wrestlers of all time. But they know their role. They do it well. Their matches, this got 10 minutes, almost 11 minutes for an opener, but it was entertaining the entire time. I can never really say that Mochizuki and Gamma overstay their welcome. And when you put them in the ring with a team like Horiguchi and Saito, it's bound to be a 3-star match. I mean, it's good stuff to start the show. It's weird to see in 2020 the way they've almost morphed their opener of either these unaffiliated opening tags where it's, a lot of 2 versus 2 instead of 4 versus 4, 5 versus 5, or it is the 6-man Toryumon versus Dragon Gate opener. It is weird to see an evolution at the start of the card, but as I've talked about multiple times now, as someone that has to review every Korakuen Hall show, I don't have to. I want to for the fans, but I have run out of words to describe the random 6-man, 8-man opening tag. It's nice to see them mix up the cards just a little bit in terms of participants and match structure.
Yeah, and it was an interesting enough match. I did like that they kind of were playing on some of the standard Ryo Saito and Genki Horiguchi tropes in this, like the rubber band attack. They did it in the ring, and they were both like, all 4 of them were kind of messing it up, which was kind of funny. And then there was a whole lot of misfires that afterwards everyone was like shaking their hands, going like, it's okay. We had it. I'm not going to hold it against you that you layered me 4 times, Gamma. It's okay. It's okay. And it just was like a nice kind of breezy way. And especially for someone like Mochizuki, who we talked a little bit about like all the stuff that's going on in Japan. Like, it's clear right now that for 2020, Masaki Mochizuki's focus is elsewhere in the N1, and that's totally fine. Like, that does not like worry me whatsoever. So he can go, hang out with these guys and goof around in the opener. Kind of interesting though about Mochizuki. The first time I think I've seen him in a long time where he hasn't colored his hair, so we actually saw some gray there, and I was like, all right, you're leaning into the old man phase. Like, just get real cranky with it. But I came out of this 2 3/4 and just was a decent, just lighthearted opener.
I'm glad you said that about Mochizuki and him sort of accepting his role this year, because I was going to bring this up when we broke down the Osaka shows, but the longer the generational warfare has gone on this year, while at the same time Mike and I for the Dragon Gate USA Rewatch and Rewind have been breaking down Junction 3 versus Blood Warriors, something that has really become apparent to me is the focal point of Junction 3 versus Blood Warriors was Masaki Mochizuki versus Shima. And the fact that 9 years later, in wrestling where time stands still and guys that were main eventing shows before I was born are still in the main event, and wrestling can't seem to draw the 18 to 34 demographic, the fact that only 9 years later, Dragon Gate can produce a similar angle without the 2 focal points for the prior incarnation of full-on unit warfare, I find it to be really impressive.
Yeah, and it's something that shows like the importance of someone like Yamato, the company ace, being in this, the elevation of Ada, and finding the right use for the Toryumon wrestlers. It's been really kind of interesting to see. And also, speaking about interesting, we had the next match, Dragon Gate versus RED singles match. This was the traditional only singles match on the show. It was Keisuke Okuda, the most interesting man in wrestling, versus Hyo, my main man, my small leopard child. Hyo got the win, but it was in 2 minutes and 6 seconds and with a disqualification, as Keisuke Okuda has officially lost it.
I am so in love with what they're doing with him. I think everything Okuda has done, since he entered the company last year, but specifically this Ishida, RED, Brave Gate chase that has sort of morphed into a few different things along the way. I still think, and I still hope, that we get one more Okuda versus Ishida singles match. I really think that is the direction that they need to be headed. But they are dragging this out like an old school feud. It is awesome to see Okuda just completely losing his mind. He doesn't really like his teammates. He doesn't like RED. He doesn't really like anybody. He's there to beat people up. He's there to throw closed fist punches. And as a result, he was disqualified for it. And it's just really interesting. It feels completely different. Not only from anything going on in Dragon Gate, it kind of feels removed from the rest of the wrestling universe, because it's, even though it's a Dragon Gate feud for the Open the Brave Gate title, it feels really old school. Like, it is slow storytelling that is simple and effective, and like we've talked about, if this was still the DVD marketplace, there would be an Okuda versus RED DVD for the feud that's happened this year, because there's so many small chapters in it. It is one that I think a few years from now we're going to look back on, and it will hopefully end on the right note and have some rewatch value, because it has been really fun to watch so far.
Yeah, and it's and they've built it in a way that like has all these twists and turns, but it feels entirely organic. They are not like going through this storyline in 2 months. They've let this thing breathe. You get to clearly see how much RED has gotten into Okuda's head, as much as so much that he's broken down and started to shove away his best friend, like his legit best friend, in a manner that would not have happened in normal times. And it's just remarkable seeing what happens here. And then you have that play into the semi-main event with the Yellow Demon Mask, and now it's a way of being able to tie in these two things together that I still don't believe are connected, but it provides more intrigue that we're not used to seeing. In a lot of ways, this is very much like a territorial feud, and it's very interesting to watch it in the one promotion that is the farthest away from a territorial style than any in the world.
I love that if you look at this feud, we'll call it Okuda versus Ishida, because I think at the core that's what it still is. They wrestle each other in a tag match. It's Ishida and Yoshida versus Ben-K and Okuda on the March 1st Champion Gate show in Osaka. The second night, the last show before we fully entered the COVID-verse. There were fans there. They could cheer even if they had masks on. It was the final show of normality. March 22nd is the first empty arena in Sambo Hall show, which is where Okuda and Ishida go around the ring and attempt to kill each other. They do the same thing a few weeks later in Sambo Hall on the next empty arena show. We know they wrestled each other in King of Gate and the Lapis Hall shows, and then had a Brave Gate defense on those Lapis Hall shows, and then crowds returned, and they've continued the feud from there. So we have seen in the 3 stages of wrestling this year, pre-COVID, empty arena COVID, and post-limited capacity, we have seen this feud now inhabit all 3 of those spaces, and I think that is really cool to see.
Yeah, and it's remarkable, and it's a testament to both of these guys, how they've been able to do that. And I find it very intriguing. I think it's going to be something that, at least on all my ballots this year, it is my feud of the year, and I hope that people, given time, get a chance to seek this out. It's kind of sad that we don't have comp tapes, because this is like the perfect comp tape to show them if I want to show a great feud around 2020. However, what was not a great feud is Takashi Yoshida's feud with Punch Tominaga. However, we also had Yosuke Santa Maria and Diamante in this tag match between Dragon Gate and RED. Yosuke Santa Maria got the pin on Takashi Yoshida with a leg roll clutch in 7 minutes and 33 seconds. And, this was the match that we both kind of went out, gave a paired groan when we saw it, and could have been a lot worse.
I am very intrigued by the feud that is brewing of Takashi Yoshida versus Mike Spears' Sanity. It seems like that is actually raging to be maybe not only the feud of the year, perhaps the feud of the future.
I mean, if I have the full mental breakdown here, I am going to blame Takashi Yoshida for it.
It is, what it's going to be? It's going to be a Takashi Yoshida singles match at a Kobe Sambo Hall show, and it is going to be direct PTSD to Mike Spears. He's going to have too many elements of hate being, thrusted upon him at once, and that is going to be what finally gets this man to break. Because Mike Spears, he's hanging on, and I love it. I love the effort that Mike Spears is putting forth to just hang on and grasp some sense of sanity. A Takashi Yoshida, Kobe Sambo Hall singles match is coming, and Mike will not be able to handle it.
Yeah, don't speak that into existence. It's going to be like Takashi Yoshida versus
Punch.
Yasushi Kanda.
It's going to be Yoshida versus Punch, or you're exactly right, Yoshida versus Kanda. And Mike, I'm telling you, we got another Kobe Sambo Hall show coming up this month. Be careful, my friend.
Yeah. That might be the one where I just go like, and this match happened. I refuse to watch it. Case, what's your review of it? And just do that for the sake of everyone, because we don't need me to pull out my remaining hair on air where I can't monetize it. But like this was like, this match, like Diamante was fine in it. Maria had a good Maria closing stretch, and Punch Tominaga seemed motivated. He seemed like he was into it, and those were like my only 3 thoughts on it.
I said this match wouldn't be a total waste of time if Maria pinned Yoshida to build towards a Brave Gate match, and that's exactly what happened. So it was fine with me. I went 2 3/4, slightly above the bare minimum professional wrestling match. I had no issues with this, even if I do not want it on my cards.
2.5 stars, bare minimum professional wrestling. What wasn't bare minimum professional wrestling
Here
for
we
5
go,
guys in
Mike.
this
Oh
next
my God!
match?
You're okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, 5 guys in this next match did not to give the bare minimum. The other person, a much wise man, saw what the kids were doing and decided he wanted no part of it and thought that his students could take care of it. We had a 6-man tag team match with the veteran Legends team of Ultimo Dragon, Don Fuji, and Shuji Kondo going up against the class of 2020 of Kenta Kobune, Takedo Kamai, and Madoka Kakuta. Kondo got the submission win on Kakuta with the Gorilla Clutch in 13 minutes and 33 seconds. I absolutely love this match. Gave it 4 stars. Straight banger. One of my favorite things on and in wrestling this year has been this class of 2020, and they brought it again, even though Ultimo Dragon wanted no part of it.
So, let's talk observer rules real quick. If we're talking,
All right.
If we're talking Rookie of the Year, and this used to be a focal point of Voices of Wrestling, we've all fell off on it. We used to do really strong Rookie of the Year tracking. We don't anymore. So, you've got Kobune, Kakuta, Kamai, and Fujikawa. I'm sure there's probably some Joshi talent I don't know about. And, Mike, I would assume, and you would know better than me, it's why I'm asking you, there are some AEW Dark guys in contention, some guys that they've brought in where it's their first taste of a major promotion.
Sure.
Where do the Dragon Gate rookies rank if you had to do any sort of top 3 for this year? I mean, is it just the Dragon Gate guys in whatever order you please? Because from what I've seen, and I watched the A show Dark to some extent, but not as close as you do. It just nothing seems close to what Kobune, Kakuta, Kamai, and Fujikawa have done.
Well, that's a real interesting question. I have to say, like, my Joshi usually extends solely to Stardom, and Stardom did most of their. I don't remember where Dave starts his calendar year, so the only person that probably would account for it is Saya Kamatani, and I don't think that she is as put together as the DG rookies. But when you go look into the United States and like the Dark appearances and like that, Ben Carter, I think is up there. Maybe he's not booked like it, but Sean Dean has been excellent on Dark and would be on my short list, but I don't think he'd make my top 3. I think Ben Carter is like the one person that I would rank up with this.
Would Will Hobbs be in contention?
Will Hobbs is like a decade in.
Okay,
That's the thing.
all right. Yeah, I was not sure.
This is his
I was
first
not,
exposure.
Yeah, because I that's one of those weird things. I'm trying to think. I think it was maybe it was Chase Owens, who once he came into New Japan, everybody was like, that's the Rookie of the Year. Then you look at his cage match, and he's got matches going back to like 2005. I did not realize Hobbs was in a situation like that, but my gut tells me Hobbs, just given the way he's been pushed ever so recently, he will win that award, whether it's his to win or not. But nothing comes close to me. I mean, and I don't even know how to separate these guys because, Fujikawa had his match in Kobe last month. We've lost our minds about Kobune from the start. We just talked about how Kamai really upped his game. And this match was the Madoka Kakuta show. He was unbelievably great in this match.
Yeah, so Will Hobbs mainly wrestled for APW out in California since 2009.
Okay, the barren wasteland of APW. Understood.
Yeah, understood. It's so interesting because, like, for like the last few months, we've been wrapping our heads around what kind of wrestler Madoka Kakuta will be, and he's still figuring it out as well. But he's doing this in a way that this was the Kakuta show. This was like his showcase. Him just doing real lanky boy lariats and just being real long and lean. Like he is the noodly guy, like that is the thing with him. And we got to see a lot of his perseverance in here, a lot of him and Don Fuji, a lot of him with Shuji Kondo. But like the one big moment that sticks in my mind from this match, he's involved in it because he's being submitted, but it's Saketo Kamai rushing the ring repeatedly, trying to get Shuji Kondo off his classmate's back, just like hammering down fists like an angry child in all the best ways, not even phasing Kondo until he does it so much that Kondo just looks like, all right, screw this kid, lariats him out of his shoes, and then locks in the gorilla clutch. It's something like, this was like, if we're just doing like match by match rankings, obviously Kakuta I feel like would be the top rookie in this match, but then it has to be Kamai because Kamai understands playing the small babyface so well, and Kabune is just Kabune. Like he's not necessarily like a supernova like wrestler, but he's one that you could easily see ace them in his future.
You know who? When I guess if we're just looking for comparisons, you know who Kamai kind of reminds me of? That is, let me clarify, not his current gimmick, but the artist formerly known as Harai Kawato, the current Master Wato. I think Kamai embodies a similar energy that Kawato had as a young lion, where you're right, he kind of is into taking bullets for his partners and wants to be in the action. He's giddy to get up in this. He wants to fight, he wants to test his strength, and he wants to protect the people he's around. I do not worry about the future of Kamai. He is going to find a role in this company that is going to suit him incredibly well. Everything I see from Kabune, I think there is future Dreamgate potential with that guy. Whether he hits it or not, I do not know, but I really think there is potential Dreamgate desires with Kento Kabune. Madoka Kakuta, I have no clue what this guy is going to be. He is the complete wild card. I don't understand how they're going to use him, when they're going to use him, what they're going to do with him. I have no feel whatsoever. All I know is that I watch this guy wrestle. I watch him throw discus lariats to Don Fuji and take the man down. And I am completely...
The second coming of Kerry Von Erich.
I'm so completely fascinated by this guy because he feels like such a different breed. Different than, Dragon Gate is so good. They're the best in the world. So good is not accurate. They're the best in the world at producing young talent. But, within that division of young talent, Kakuta is just different. I just don't know what it is. I can't get a feel for a possible comparison to him on the roster. I couldn't project his ceiling right now. Maybe if he gets a gimmick, changes his name, changes his gear, who knows? Maybe I'll have a better idea then. But I was awestruck by how good Kakuta was, and even after that, I still have no clue what the future holds for him.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think a path forward for him could be like seeing him under a mask, seeing him with a different gimmick, seeing him maybe like bulk up and you have him in a mask. He has a good enough size that he could be like the monster person of this generation just because he's so much taller and he looks like he could be someone that could put on some muscle. So like there's a lot of ways to go with this, but you can't project it right now. And that's really interesting to me because we're really I'm so excited because like we only got about like 2 months of Shun Watanabe before he became Shun Skywalker. And then he pretty much was Shun Skywalker from there on out. Now we're approaching month 4 and month 5 of Madoka Kakuta, and it's one of those things that like he has a look, he has a t-shirt, he has like gear. Crowds are the crowds seem to be getting into these kids as much as we could tell. I mean, they're no heartthrobs like Sora, but the crowd likes their fight. But you can't project out Madoka Kakuta until we know what he's going to transition into, and I find that incredibly fascinating because everyone else seems like they could have very clear roles. Kakuta is the one that's like, oh, he could be Magnitude Kishiwada Jr., and it would not surprise me at this point. He could be, I don't know, I'm trying to think of my one. He could be Diamante Cito or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with him with that. Or he could just be like this like tall giant character. You can't project it, and it's really fascinating. And the one thing that like we can say now versus what we could say after his debut, he was the person in his debut match that was taped over the King of Gate months in Lapis Hall that we didn't get as much of a sense for. He wasn't the one taking the beating. It was Fujikawa who took the beating, but he was involved now. We have a good idea of like his skills, and for a guy that is still this X Factor, I have utter confidence in whatever he does will be interesting, and I feel like that he'd live up to the role, but it's just we can't tell what it will be.
If there's a possibility of Madoka Kakuta becoming the second coming of Magnitude Kishiwada and them playing off of that gimmick, I am going to LaGuardia. I am stealing Larry Dallas's ticket back to Japan. I am stepping on his head and vaulting onto that plane to get to Japan to follow Magnitude Kishiwada Jr. around, because that is the take my money gif in essence. That is exactly what I'm hoping for. I think there is a very unrealistic chance of that happening, but God, I hope that Madoka Kakuta becomes the second coming of Magnitude Kishiwada. And I think you're exactly right in looking at him as one of the bigger guys, because you're right, he has height to him, but he really needs to put on muscle. He's got just a weird body right now, and it makes, in this company where aesthetics are everything, it makes it just a little bit harder to figure out how they're going to use him or what they're going to do. But less than a year into his career, we've seen that he can take a beating from Fuji and Kondo, and to an extent Ultimo, and that he can also hang with Fuji and Kondo and give the beating right back to them. Really exciting match. I went 4 stars on it. I am smitten. I am blown away with the class of 2020.
Absolutely. I went 4 stars on this as well. And then that's led into like the real meat of the lineup, as we had a 8-man tag, Torimon versus Dragon Gate, Naruki Doi, Dragon Kid, Susumu Yokosuka, and Kakatora versus KZ, UT, who is a replacement for Strong Machine J, Kota Minoura, and Jason Lee. KZ got the win on Kakatora with 13 minutes and 16 seconds of his running elbow smash, and this was like where I say like there's 4 matches that you could argue are, or 3 matches you could argue are notebook level. I went 3 3/4 on this match, and the only reason why I didn't go 4 is I would have loved to see like another 7 minutes of this. Like this was, everyone brought it. We got a really motivated Kagatora. We got UT, and they're showing like no fear about his injury past. And then you got KZ, who's one of the best in-ring workers in the world, starting his feud with Naruki Doi, and it just was incredibly interesting.
You hit the nail on the head as to what took this match to another level as compared to just another 8-man tag, and that is the motivated Kagatora. He put in work in this match. He looked great in this match. He bumped well and gave offense well to all 4 of the Dragon Gate guys. I thought it was, and I'm someone that is very hard on Kagatora. Even at the peak of internet buzz for him, I have never been a Kagatora guy. I think he's very good at times, but I just don't care about him that often. I thought he was excellent in this match. I'm so glad they are running a version of this match again at the Osaka shows that we're about to talk about. 4 stars on the dot for me. It's something I've said before. I'll continue to say it. Mike, if this match happened in America, let's say it was, a WrestleCon show that Dragon Gate's on. If this match happens in America, it becomes the talk of the wrestling universe. A crisp 13-minute 8-man tag where there is not a moment to breathe, where there is not any sort of clumsy transitions, when it is flawless execution for 13 minutes like this. Mike, no other company does this. And this was it was a Dragon Gate match. It was 4 stars. It was whatever. It'll be at the bottom of my spreadsheet. Anywhere else, this becomes the talk of the wrestling community.
Oh no, I'll go one step further, Case. This match happens during the collective next month, this match becomes the best match of the collective.
A low bar to clear. Although I will say, the collective did announce Jonathan Gresham versus Lee Moriarty, and I think that does sound excellent.
That's the top match of that week, and by far.
I can't imagine them topping that on paper. I just don't know the talent out there that could possibly construct a match to beat that. But no, if this happened to the collective, are you kidding me? Mike, if that match happened to the collective, it would be a top 10 match in the Voices of Wrestling Match of the Year poll, because
absolutely.
The indie crowd is so desperate to find something to care about right now, because they have been given utter nonsense by Game Changer and by lesser companies that are less successful than Game Changer. If you had an actually good match like this, forget it. That would be the talk of indie wrestling for the next 6 months. Here it's just a match. The working standard is second to none.
Yeah, and then after that match, we had KZ challenge Naruki Doi to a singles match at Dangerous Gate. So even though this was just a match on the card, it built to something that will be paid off in Tokyo later this month on a show that's already sold out, by the way. I don't know if you caught that. Dangerous Gate, for whatever their seating requirement is, completely sold out. Like, Dragon Gate, yet again, is just hitting everything as well as one can right now. And I think that's kind of remarkable. And now we have like a non-title match at Dangerous Gate that I'm incredibly stoked for.
Yeah, no, the card had every reason to sell out. It's outstanding on paper, and, just to jump ahead a little bit, but we're getting a Kaito Ishida singles match, which would get me in the building if at all possible, because if he wrestles anything like he did in this tag match, we are in for a treat.
Okay, so this match will be a rematch of my current 2020 match of the year, and it's still like fifth from the top on the show. Like, that's how insane that this upcoming card will be. Of course, next week we'll give our full preview. And we have another match that came out of the next match.
Yeah, hold on. I got to pause you right here, Mike. I completely forgot that Doi and KZ already wrestled this year, and it is my Dragon Gate match of the year. And they're just throwing it on this Dangerous Gate card. You're completely right. This fucking company, I love them so much.
Yeah. I mean, it is from the before times. So it's understandable that we think that was like a year ago when it was only 7 months or less than that.
Mr. February, KZ, he delivered in the clutch there, and I think he's going to beat Doi this time around. We'll talk about it next week. Let's talk about this tag that has Kaito Ishida, the world's most interesting wrestler, and Dragon Dia, the world's second most interesting wrestler.
Well, those were kind of the team captains of this match, and it was kind of the big storyline throughout. But we also had Ben-K teaming with Dia, representing Dragon Gate, which was going up against RED, led by Ishida, tagging with Kazuma Sakamoto. And before we get into Dia and Ishida, Ben-K and Kazuma Sakamoto, they offered like the best side dish possible to the main storyline that was happening in this match. Like, imagine you're going to a nice restaurant, and you already have whatever your main course is going to be, but you're going to go get a nice side. This was getting like your excellently done asparagus. This is like your nice salad. This is your starch. This was like, these two guys just went at it, and it wasn't even the big part of this match that I have a rating down here on the paper that I'm about to go higher of. I think it's a 4-star match, and a lot of that was, of course, Dia and Ishida, but Ben-K and Sakamoto weren't along for the ride, and it ended up being a 12-minute match where Ishida got the pin yet again on Dragon Dia, as Dragon Dia cannot get over the hitch in his step facing RED members.
Well, first of all, there is nothing asparagus-like about Ben-K and Kazuma Sakamoto.
That's true.
That is a
That's
starch
true.
all the way, if not just a second serving of meat. Okay, there's no asparagus qualities between those two.
Case, I think I have a better way of putting
Please.
it. This is the surf and turf match. Because we got the lobster of Ishida and Dia, but then we have the steak of Ben-K and Kazuma Sakamoto. Does that sound better to you? I think we're going to go with
It explains why I like the match so much, because young boy K-Slow, big fan of the surf and turf when I'm not paying for it. This match, it's funny you said that you think you underrated it. I think I did too. In the voicesofwrestling.com review, I went 3.5. Now that I've had 24 hours for this match to sink in with me, and now that I'm talking about it, I'm going to bump it up a 1/4 star. 3 3/4, not quite spreadsheet for me. But my God, these 4 men. I mean, it's weird to think, a year ago, Ben-K was Open the Dream Gate champion. We made such a big deal about it. And rightfully so. And now he's playing second fiddle to Dragon Dia, which seems like an insult, but it's not, because Ben-K is just really good in that role, and we saw in his build to winning the Dream Gate how just excellent of a tag team wrestler Ben-K was, and it's because he can, pull focus at times in this match when he's in the ring with Sakamoto, and then he can let his partner Dragon Dia shine and do what he needs to do. And Dia once again takes the fall. It is a fascinating thing to watch him continue to struggle and sputter and just not be able, he's been able to beat everybody else on the roster. He cannot beat RED. I love that story. And, we're 5 years in to the red, black, and yellow branding of the heel unit between Berserk, Antios, and RED. There are times where they have felt really overbearing in the past. Right now, I love what they're doing. Eita as a champion, I think it's going to work. I'm not entirely sold on it, but I think it's going to work. But everything else down the card, this is a heel unit firing on all cylinders right now. I hope by the end of this storyline that they disband, that we get new heel branding. But if they end, at the end of this generational warfare, they are going to be ending on a high note.
Yeah, and it's something that kind of struck me in this match. Interesting that we both kind of came away with a similar kind of conclusion with this, that this RED team now, it feels like a really strong heel unit after like a year where it was propped up by Pac and then just like Eita kind of growing into it, because you like look at this and you look at the two guys here, the three guys in the main event, and then Diamante and Hyo. That's like 7 solid guys to have in a heel unit, but I'm ready to see what goes next. But this is like the moment in time where I'm like, you know what, RED, you kind of rock right now. Like, this is like a time where I did not think I'd be saying this in 2018 or 2019, but I'm liking RED now. They've been a lot of fun, and they were a lot of fun on this show, given the obvious caveat.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see this unit morph and shift, and as we'll talk about either this week or next week, kind of depending on time, but the foundation of the red, black, and yellow heel unit, initially starting with Berserk, comes from Dangerous Gate 2015, when Shingo beat Yoshino for the Open the Dream Gate belt. He left Monster Express and then formed this heel unit that has certainly gone through ups and downs, to say the least, in their 5-year history, but something that has taken precedent more so this past decade than the first decade of the company, and I think we're going to see more of it as we go into the 2020s, is Dragon Gate really letting these units breathe and maybe last for 4 or 5 years instead of 2 or 3 years. And we've seen that with the heel unit that has, they're Dragon Gate fans. All they know is the red, black, and yellow heel unit in the main event scene. That is a generation of fans that is all they have seen. And again, it's been good and bad, but right now I really like the place they're at.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We did have a really cool finishing stretch with Dia getting a chair to the back, and then we have Ishida going for the first Tiger Suplex. Dia is able to get out of it, get a flash pin attempt, but then it's just he is not able to get over the hurdle. And Ishida locks in the Tiger Suplex hold for the second time and gets the pin there. And then Maria comes out, challenges for the Brave Gate, setting up Kaito Ishida's next Brave Gate defense at Dangerous Gate. Ishida was a little dismissive towards Maria, saying, hey, you're a comedy wrestler. This will be an opener because you're a comedy wrestler. Felt like that was a little bit of a low shot there. And then he ended it talking about the Yellow Demon and getting right into Ben-K's face, saying, you know who this reminds me of? He's wearing yellow just like your best friend. So they're playing up the idea that the Yellow Demon mask is Keisuke Okuda. And did he say it here or afterwards that he'll unveil the Yellow Demon mask after Dangerous Gate?
I believe it was here that he said it, that at the October Korakuen, we are getting the unmasking of the Yellow Demon. It was either here or after the main event. Either way, this segment worked. We'll talk about it more next week. Very intrigued by Maria and Ishida wrestling in the opener. Just an interesting caveat to that match that I can't totally figure out what that means, quite honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting match on a loaded show. Finishing out this Korakuen, we had the number change 6-man tag match. This was set up, of course, from the August Korakuen, where they drew their entry order for the cage match. It was the odds versus the evens, which I only noticed just now. That tells you where my mental state is right now, okay? So I only now noticed, they put the odds on one side, the evens on another. It was Big R Shimizu, the 1 seed, Eita, the 3, Yamato, the 5, going up against Kai, the 2 seed, BB Hulk, the 4, and Masato Yoshino representing the last entrant into the cage. Big R Shimizu got the win. He defended his number 1 spot as he had his special variation of the La Magistral Cradle. That's surprisingly over, but it's not over in a way that's like, holy shit, this is a crazy move. It's more like, oh, it's time for this dipshit to do his flash pin as he pinned Masato Yoshino in 15 minutes and 27 seconds. And after some consternation, it seems like Shimizu is sick of Ada's shit and decided to give him Yoshino's 6th entry spot. So that changes Ada's number 3 to Yoshino's number 6. And Masato Yoshino, probably for the first time in his career, was thankful for Big R Shimizu.
This was all worth it because with it being Shimizu in particular to announce that Eita and Yoshino were changing entry order, that spot was beautiful. I mean, that was a really, really well done segment that fits the narrative they're going for, that is executed by the right people in the right place. My hang up on this, look, I didn't think this match was necessary, and as we'll talk about with one of the Osaka shows in just a second, for whatever reason, I am never a fan of what are typically the Dead or Alive, Road to Dead or Alive 6-man tags, where they have the cage match participants kind of scattered about in these random 6-man tags where unit affiliations blur, etc. I don't know why. I don't like these matches. I didn't really like this match. The crowd, as much as they could, they were into it again. With the exception of Doi, you're looking at the biggest stars in the company, so, they were alive for this, but the in-ring, I don't know, this match did not feel like a Korakuen main event. It felt like a Kobe Sambo Hall main event, which, not necessarily bad, but not what I'm looking for in this role, and I fear that when they headline one of the Osaka shows with a similar match, I am going to think the same thing when I'm done watching it.
Yeah, it's fair to say that this really was a match that was about interplay. Everyone trying to interrupt their own teammates' pins because they're the ones who wanted to protect their spot. Good storyline match, but not necessarily a Korakuen main event. I went 3.5 stars because, the crowd was into it, and Shimizu's the world's slowest La Magistral Cradle is legitimately gives me life. It's just one of those things that the crowd, you actually heard the crowd laugh a little bit and applaud heavily for it, and I thought that was great. And then the post-match is just Big R Shimizu being his true self, being tired of Ada, being an asshole to him, going like, oh, I want you to be last now. And then Yoshino going like, that means I'm third now? Thank you, Shimizu-sama. And it was tremendous, bowing to Shimizu and just sheer glee, thinking that his career might not be ended in the cage match. But yeah, this was a Road to main event. And, after the stretches of match 4 through 6, I'm okay with that.
Completely.
This was the Road to main event.
Completely.
And this is and just to put a bow on it, great show. It will be on the network with Japanese broadcast and commentary until the 16th. We do not know when the English commentary version will go up. It might be up by the time they all listen to this show. But, Case, before we get to Osaka, just going to run down this pretty quickly. The only other 2 shows we had over the last week were their traditional Okinawa late summer tour done in concert with Rikyu Dragon Pro, where they bring the fans to Osaka and they go have a nice time on the beach for 2 days, and they have 2 shows as well. Attendance for this is low, but it doesn't really matter. They're all this is like a bot vacation show. Like, I don't judge that whatsoever. And you just get to have like nice little matches on here. Not really worth going down everything. If you saw the card, you could guess what happened. The one match that I'm sad did not make tape, however, is Doyoshi, Naruki Doi, and Masato Yoshino on the first night facing off against Dragon Daya and Jason Lee. Dragon Lee is a wrestler who doesn't use that name anymore.
That would be, you know what, if we could get that going though, a Speed Muscle versus Dragon Lee and Dragon Daya tag, if somebody wants to fund that, let me know and I'll kick it a few bucks, because that also sounds excellent.
Yeah, that'd be fun. But yeah, no, this was just looking at the cards, that's probably the highlight, I think, of the tour, other than UT versus Kaito Ishida. So, I mean, those were my thoughts about these Okinawa shows that probably will never make tape.
Well, it's a bummer they're not making tape, just because I'm sure even in the COVID verse, they're very fun shows just aesthetically. But the one match that you mentioned is the match that mattered, where it's Doi and Yoshi versus Jason Lee and Dragon Daya. And Mike, I don't know if you noticed, but Dragon Dia ate the pin. He took a Bakatare sliding kick in 14 minutes, which, according to my calculations, this is the first time Dragon Dia has been pinned by a member of the Toryumon generation during this feud. All of Dragon Dia's falls previously had come from RED, and I found it very interesting that he took the fall in an untelevised, as you put it, bought vacation show tag match, but it was at least a small thing to make note of.
Yeah, small thing to make note of. And then also, man, give me a UT versus Kaito Ishida match every day of the week, and I'm happy. That would be something also worth touching on. Something else that's worth touching on before we break down these Osaka shows. It was announced with Korakuen that in partnership with the LEC Corporation, Dragon Gate has launched a new program on Amazon Video Prime in Japan. It is Dragon Gate, all in lowercase letters. That's denoting that this show will be entirely different from the main Dragon Gate brand. And they've had the first one up. They did make a note on this that Strong Machine J activated the other machines for their hibernation. This is exclusive to the Japanese Amazon Prime, but it's like 3,000 yen to like own the VOD, and then 900 for a view. Entirely different universe. They've revived Mochizuki Dojo and had Shinya Aoki join it. Don Fuji is the manager for the Strong Machines. It just is its own thing. It's wild. It was apparently taped during the shutdown at Lapis Hall. I can get these shows, but I don't think the shows, because they're in their own universe, other than saying, Shinya Aoki and Mochizuki Dojo, I don't really see that worth time or money personally, but I imagine if these do pretty well, then they will make them available to the West. But wanted to make a note of it. Did you have any other big thoughts about Undercase Dragon Gate in concert with the LEC Corporation? The LEC Corporation sell basically the Mr. Clean Magic Erasers in Japan.
Look, if it pops up on the network, I'll give it a watch, and I'll at least tweet about it, if not covered on the show. I don't anticipate that happening, though. It looks like it's locked into Amazon Prime Japan, and it's not canon. It's like Prime Zone, which, if it's like Prime Zone, it means the matches probably aren't very good, not because guys aren't trying hard, but they're just not structured to have great matches. It's worth mentioning because I think it's going to bring Dragon Gate a bunch of money. I think it's a really smart business move to do, but unless these shows are brought to me in an easier capacity, I will not be watching them. And also, doing the press release building around the Strong Machines, not an incentive to buy.
Yeah. As soon as I saw the photo of the Strong Machines out there, I was like, okay, I know what this is.
I know what this project is. They are going to line their wallets, and good for them. I am not participating in this, though.
Yeah, no, those were my thoughts exactly. So this weekend we have 2 shows coming up. One of the shows might have happened by the time this gets to you. They are doing the double shot that we've been talking about for the last few weeks in Edion Arena Osaka 2. The first show is on the 12th. It'll be live on the network at 6 p.m. Japanese Standard Time. That's 5 a.m. for people on the West Coast of the United States, 2 a.m. for the people in the Pacific, and then the next night, they will be back for an afternoon show at 3 p.m. Japanese Standard Time. That's 2 a.m. on the East Coast and midnight on the Pacific. Okay, so you want me to just run down the cards and we'll give our thoughts after that?
Yeah, most of my thoughts on these cards intersected with our Korakuen discourse, so please run them down, or at least this first show, and we'll break that down and then talk about the second show.
Yeah, let's do that. So, opener, 6-man tag team match, Punch Tominaga, UT, and Ho-Ho Loon versus Kaito Ishida, Diamante, and Kazuma Sakamoto. A singles match between Yosuke Santa Maria and Hyo. A tag match of Ultimo Dragon and Ryo Saito versus Gamma and Masaki Mochizuki. A 6-man tag match with Masato Yoshino, Don Fuji, Shuji Kondo versus Benkei, Keisuke Okuda, and Jimmy. Jimmy's making an appearance on this show. And then a tag match of Yamato and Kai versus Ada and Big Arshimizu. And the main event of the first night is KZ, Kota Minoura, Jason Lee, and Dragon Dia versus Naruki Doi, Dragon Kid, Susumu Yokosuka, and Kaga Tora.
Yeah, my eyes immediately go to match 4. Obviously, Jimmy is taking the fall in this match. 3 of the most legendary Dragon Gate competitors of all time against Benkei, Okuda, and Jimmy. The fall there is obvious. I'm pumped to see Jimmy get to prove himself in this capacity. I hope Shuji Kondo throws him literally all across the ring. That match has potential to be really great. And then, like I said, they're running back a version of the match 5 from Korakuen. They're putting it in the main event here and replacing UT with Dragon Dia, which for as much as we love UT, that is an upgrade. So that match has a chance to be absolutely terrific. It's going to get more time. It's in a better place on the card, and there's a better wrestler in the match. So this first Osaka show, really looking forward to it. There's a lot of fun stuff here.
Yeah, and then you have the stuff going to the cage match with the former Tri Vanguard tag team against the former top RED tag team. It's a fun show. Looks like it's going to be a good time. The stuff on the lower part of the show looks like what it is, and then as soon as we get to like the last 3 matches, that seems to be where there's a little bit of meat on the bone there. Night 2, we started off with what's more of a traditional opening match. Ultimo Dragon, Don Fuji, and Dragon Kid versus Masaki Mochizuki, Gamma, and Punch Tominaga. A tag team match, Genki Horiguchi and Susumu Yokosuka versus Kisuke Okuda and Jason Lee. The singles match on the show, Shuji Kondo versus Kento Kabune. Thoughts and prayers. Press. We all need to press F in chat for him there. And then we have an 8-man tag. It is Maria, Minoura, UT, and Daya versus Ishida, Yoshida, Diamante, and Sakamoto. Match 5 is Naruki Doi and Yuji Kanda. First time we've seen Kanda in a couple weeks, going against KZ and Benkei. And the main event, as we've talked about before, is the traditional Road to Dangerous Gate special 6-man tag team match where they mix up all the stables and they're doing their traditional lead that we talked about Korakuen. The teams this time are Eita, Masato Yoshino, and Yamato, who I don't think that those three have never been in a unit together. No. Against BB Hulk, Big R Shimizu, and Kai. So we kind of have former Tribe Vanguard / Dia Hearts members there. So night 2 looks like the more traditional go-home show for the pay-per-view.
Mike, you got to give me an over-under on Kondo Kabune and the match length. What are we thinking? You got to give me a number and I can adapt to it. I am so excited for this match.
All right, Case, I'm going to do this. We're going to get a little bit of ASMR for our listeners here. That's the cap of my marker off. We're going to put this on the whiteboard. So, Kondo and Kabune, over, under. I'm going to set the time at 8 minutes.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right. Over, under on Kabune, who I think could be a future Dreamgate champion, against Kondo, who, if there was a comeback wrestler of the year award, it would be Kondo taking not only first place, but I think second and third as well. The story of Shuji Kondo this year has been phenomenal to watch. An 8-minute over-under on Kondo Kabune.
I said a tough time here.
Mike, give me the over. Barely.
Okay.
But give me the over.
You see, if I wanted to be a real jerk, I would set the time at 8 minutes, 30 seconds. That's the trick there. But I think going over on that is fair.
By default, are you going to get the under? Can we compare this next week?
Yeah. Since I set the time, I take the opposite of your option, so I'm taking the end.
All right, that is the standout on this card. I weirdly think that Dragon Gate versus RED 8-man, that Maria Minoura UT Dia team, that just looks fun. I'm just excited to see what those 4 can do together. The latter half of the card doesn't do a ton for me, but Kondo versus Kabune, I am all in on that match.
Yeah, and just for record, Case, you're currently 1-0 in our wagers. You were the one who had the Kondo wagers now, as we're calling them. So with you picking the correct time, the closest to the Kondo Hyo match from last month. So interesting show. Yeah, no, that 8-man tag is going to be real interesting. And we do have my weak point in there. So we'll see about that. And then, Horiguchi and Yokosuka versus Okuda and Lee, that could be a lot of fun. That match has potential some storylines there. And then it's nice that Yoshishi Kondo gets out of the house. I'm glad for him, Gets to go out, go on a stroll, get to be in a match, Seems like a good time for him. I'm happy for Kondo.
He's got to earn that paycheck, okay? You look at it as a nice stroll out of the house. I look at this as a guy who's got to do some labor for me to justify that paycheck. All right, we got different ends of the spectrum on Kondo and his labor rights here. I'm not sure if I'm pumped to see him back on the card or not, but he's in a match with 3 really good guys, so I think it'll work out all right.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting. In case we're right at an hour, do you want to do our quick hits of the best matches check out on the network for Dangerous Gate stuff now, or should we do that next week and just make it a full-on Dangerous Gate preview and retrospective?
You know what? Let's do it now, because we're gonna have two shows.
Okay.
We're gonna have two shows to break down next week, plus previewing Dangerous Gate. So I've got match recommendations, about 2 or 3 match recommendations for each Dangerous Gate show that is currently on the network, which is 2015 through 2019. The 2014 show will be uploaded to the Dragon Gate Network on September 17th, and the 2012 show will be uploaded on the 20th. So I've got recommendations for all of that, but let's give the listeners a week to get into the Dangerous Gate mindset. And you just want me to run down these recommendations real quick, and you can kind of, throw in some matches here and there?
Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of it. So this is not going to be as pronounced as our Kobe World one, where there was just a ton of Kobe World shows to go through. There's only been Dangerous Gate since 2012.
Yeah, so let me go through. We'll start with 2017 through 2019, sort of a more modern era of the promotion. 2017, you're going to want to watch CK1, Shima and Dragon Kid defending the Twin Gate belts against Big R Shimizu and Kotoka. Super fun match there. And then the Berserk versus Jimmy's unit disbands match. An all-timer, incredible drama, really good stuff on that show.
Yeah, and the main event there is Masaki Mochizuki ending Yamato's incredibly long title reign. And it's worked as a Masaki Mochizuki match. That's worth checking out there as well. And if you're looking for a point to kind of just jump in on this show, and if you're interested in it, match 4 is a maximum trio of Speed Muscle and Benkei versus Eita, Kaito Ishido, and Takahiro Yamamura, right before Takahiro Yamamura really broke out. So, this is, a fun show. Really, if you enter at that point, you're going to have a good time.
2018, there's a really good Yoshino versus Doi main event, one of their better singles matches. There's a 10-man elimination tag match with RED and Natural Vibes, which was the debut of Kazuma Sakamoto. But the match to watch from 2018 Dangerous Gate, one of my favorite matches of this era of the promotion, BB Hulk and Yamato versus Masaki Mochizuki and Shun Skywalker for the Open the Twin Gate belts. We've talked since he debuted about how Shun is dangerous and unpredictable and is always one wrong step away from possibly ending his career. There is not a more dangerous Shun Skywalker match than this one. He is on another planet in this match. He narrowly avoids death multiple times. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's just this insane thing. There's these dives, and he did one of those in the match we reviewed with IWRG. His Spaceman dives are the most insane thing in wrestling. Just remarkably nuts. And then the 10-man tag was the big reveal of RED and Kazuma Sakamoto. It's interesting to have that. Shingo Takagi versus Kai at a time where we were very down on Kai.
Yeah, because Mike, that match sucked. Other than Shingo's final match in the company, which was Shingo versus Hulk, that is Shingo's last singles match in Dragon Gate, and that match is abysmal.
I thought this match wasn't great, but I think this was legitimately Kai's best match in the company to that point, which tells you how rough things are. And yeah, you forgot your main man's in the opener case, and I can't believe
is this a Drastic Boy opener?
No, it's a Willie Mack opener.
Oh, man. Willie Mack, I want him back. He was so good during this time period. And at least I talked to Willie Mack briefly at an AAW show right before things shut down. And Willie Mack seemed very confused that I knew that he wrestled in Japan. He seemed very taken aback by the fact that I had seen his work in Dragon Gate. But he also at least seemed excited or open to the idea about possibly returning. I hope that happens at some point in the distant future. 2019 to conclude the era of shows that are on in full on the Dragon Gate Network. I would recommend Shun Skywalker versus Susumu Yokosuka, the no DQ match of Big R Shimizu and Eita versus Genki, Horiguchi, and KZ, and the main event of Benkei versus Yamato.
Yeah, no, that's really... Those are the really big high points on this show. Really, everything else on this, I'm looking at this card. This is the card that I have the least recommendations for, unless you are of a certain mindset like I am. Mochizuki no Kuda versus Doi Nishida is a fun tag match.
That is a fun tag match, yeah.
But really, those last 3 matches are the big standouts there. I mean, as much as I love my boy Hio Watanabe, that Triangle Gate match was kind of rough in retrospect.
2016, to move backwards a little bit, these shows are clipped in some capacity on the network. I didn't really dive into 2016 too much. I expect every match to be on there, but a lot of the undercard to be cut drastically. But from 2016, the 8-man tag of Shima, Dragon Kid, Flamita, and Masaki Mochizuki against Big R Shimizu, Masato Yoshino, T-Hawk, and Peter Casa. That match rules. There was no reason for it to happen. Did not make storyline sense, but that match ruled. And then the Yamato versus Akira Tozawa opened the Dreamgate main event.
Yeah. Was this the match or was the Kobe World the match where they completely didn't catch Peter on a dive, and then Peter didn't catch Flamita on the next dive?
I believe
this match
that is World, because World was a triple threat trios match, a 9-minute that match, and there's a dive where Casa just hits the fucking ground. I mean, it's hard to watch because he comes down with such velocity. Here, it was a weird match. I remember when it was announced, people were like, well, why are they doing this? Like, because a lot of Peter Casa's run, he was teaming with Overgeneration. He was never an official member, but it was largely aligned with Shima and Dragon Kid, and then they squared him off, against those guys with Monster Express, and it was a collection of spots, but it was a very fun one at that.
Yeah, and then, this was like the revival of the Yokosuka Chome tag against Doi and Shingo Takagi. Not the best match, but yeah, Yamato and Akira Tozawa is such an interesting one just for how emotional it gets post-match.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Because that's when Tozawa announced that he'd be leaving the company.
Unfortunately. Well, 2015, one of the all-time great Dragon Gate shows. I feel like we just talked about this. Tozawa versus Punch versus Shisa for the Brave Gate belt. Dragon Kid and Flamita versus Hulk and Mochizuki. Shima Fuji Gamma versus Shimizu Eita T-Hawk. The Jimmys versus Mad Blanky unit disbands match. And Shingo versus Yoshino. The thing with 2015, watch the whole file. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Yeah, and really, I mean, I have a soft spot for him, but you have Nisawa Wrong Guy in the comedy match there. It's just like such a strong show from top to bottom. Like, Dragon Kid and Flamita signing the tag team together against Hulk and Masaki Mochizuki is wild. The Zombies Veterans trio is tremendous. Like, that one, it was a lot of fun. And then you had, because this was post-millennials, this is right when Eita was starting to turn heel in a little way there. We were earlier on the show after the opener, Kotoka completely snaps and shaves UT's head. Remember that?
Wow, wow.
And then you have probably the most emotional loser must disband match in company history. Like, that one is just tremendous. And then that's led up with Shingo Takagi. Like, this is, if you're looking at eras, an era started with this Dangerous Gate show, mainly because it's the end of Mad Blanky, but also because you have Shingo turning heel for the last time. Just one of the most tremendous shows that the company's ever put on. A show that historically Hiroshi Tanahashi was mad about because it got more praise than the G1 final that year.
I did not know that. I
forgot about it until someone brought that up to me in the VOD Discord that last night. I completely forgot about it. But yeah, no, this show is that good that Hiroshi Tanahashi does not usually talk about Dragon Gate, but was mad about this show being this good.
Oh, that rules. And I really like the G1 finals from that year. That's a really good G1, but that's good to hear. I did not know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 2014. 2014's a fun show as well as I'm looking at it. This 2014 show had a lot of interesting stuff here as well.
Yeah, so 2014, this show will be uploaded to the network on the 17th. I love this show. I have probably not seen this show since it aired, but looking at this card, I remembered the entire thing. It is the Punch Tamanaga versus Shima singles match that is worth watching for historical reasons. T-Hawk and Eita versus Dragon Kid and Mochizuki. This match is crazy underrated. This is peak T-Hawk and Eita against a really fun team and a unit Diehards that I will continue to defend. They were largely useless, but always put on good matches. And this is actually, I think, even pre-Diehards. This is Dragon Kid and Mochizuki teaming as Team Pantaloons because they both wore long, baggy pants. You had a Mad Blanky versus Monster Express. Loser Resurrection Survival 8-man tag Captain's Fall match, which I remember Uha Nation being really good in that. And then the main event was...
This match owns.
Yeah,
this
oh
match
my
outright
God.
rules.
And then
probably one of Mondai Ryu's best matches ever.
that is saying something. And then Doi versus Hulk in the main event. Doi being Mr. Ota Ward, threatened to hit the muscular bomb on Hulk and break his neck. I love the build to this. I love that match. 2014, like I said, it goes up on the 17th. A really, really fun show.
Yeah, like this is just a blast here. The weird no disqualification Punch versus Shima match is wild here. Susumu Katoka versus Don Fuji and Yuka Hayashi, now known as El Lindaman. Just like a really just fun match. It's just a wild show. Like this is one of the things that like this was when Hulk's reign felt fresh, when everything was beautiful and nothing hurt, especially for Hulk.
I like Hulk's reign a lot. That's one of those that just it'll be forgotten in history. But Hulk's Dreamgate run was really good, and then
it was a blast.
We go to 2012, which will be uploaded on the 20th, the day before Dangerous Gate. The last thing we'll talk about today, Mike. There are 3 matches here, and I've seen this show a long time ago, but it's a show with 3 matches worth watching. Obviously, Mochizuki and Fuji versus Shingo and Yamato. Anytime those teams wrestled, it's essential viewing. The main event of Shima versus Doi. And of course, a guy that we just talked about on the Dragon Gate USA Rewind and Rewatch series for historical purposes, Daichi Hashimoto teams with Masato Yoshino against Kagetora and Susumu. You would be an absolute fool not to watch that match when it is uploaded.
God, this is real. Dragon Gate was in a different time looking at this card. I mean, we have Punch before he was Punch. We have Super Shenlong 3, Habu. I mean, I miss Habu. Habu was fun.
I'd book him tomorrow, Mike. I think he's still incredibly good.
Yeah, Masamune getting a Brave Gate shot. That Hashimoto match sucks. Like, and that's considering who else is in that match. And then, like, you have, like, the next important step in the Naoki Tanizaki naming story. Like, that's a huge thing. And then, yeah, as you said, like, Mochi Fuji versus Takagi Yamato is a must-watch whenever you see it. Like, this match might have been... No, this is 2012. There were other better matches in this year, but would have been, like, a top 3 match of the year for me. That Team Veteran Returns versus Akatsuki tag team. Probably the best thing Akatsuki ever did.
Yeah, either that or the match where they disband. It's one or the other.
Yep, one or the other. Pick your choice. Pick your poison there.
Well, Mike, that's all I've got, not only for Dangerous Gate history, but for this entire episode.
Yeah, I'm glad that we did that. I like looking back at these shows and remembering some matches. I mean, where else can we talk about Habu, Peter Casa, and Daichi Hashimoto?
Mike, I promise you there's no other podcast that will dare mention those 3 names in the same episode.
All right, and that's going to do it for this week's edition of Open the Voice Gate, our update episode. We'll be back probably at a normal time next week. We, of course, because of Korakuen, we wanted to shift things so we could cover it when it was timely. But we'll be back next week, talking about the Osaka doubleheader, and then doing our huge Dangerous Gate 2020 preview, and taking a look at what will be, no matter what, Masato Yoshima's last homecoming show in his home ward of Higashi, Osaka. So for Case, I'm Mike, and we'll catch you next time on Open the Voice Gate.